The Holloway family rehearsal dinner was the kind of event that required a venue coordinator, a printed schedule, and 3 weeks of my mother arguing with the florist over hydrangea shades. She had settled on dusty blue. She had told me this twice since I landed at Port Columbus that afternoon, once in the car and once in the hotel lobby, and I could tell she was still not entirely at peace with the decision. The ballroom at the Dublin Grand had been dressed for the occasion: ivory linens, candles in low glass cylinders, eucalyptus runners that smelled like something between a spa and a grocery store. Travis and Amber stood near the bar, looking the way people look the night before their wedding, slightly dazed and very happy, and not entirely present in any one conversation. 60 people milled around them. Extended family from Dayton, Amber's relatives from Cincinnati, cousins who I recognized from the tops of their heads and not much else. I had flown in from Austin that morning. My brother was getting married. I would not miss it. I'm Zoe Holloway, and in this family that has always meant something specific. It means the youngest. The one who left Ohio for Texas at 23 and never really explained why. The one who does something with design and the internet that nobody has been able to summarize at a dinner party. I had stopped trying to explain it years ago, not because I was secretive, but because the explanation always ended the same way: a polite nod, a redirect, and someone asking Travis about the new store locations. Travis ran the commercial side of Holloway Home Interiors. My father, Leonard, had built it from a single flooring showroom in Gahanna into a regional chain, with 4 locations across central Ohio. It was a real business, solid, respected, the kind of company that sponsors Little League teams and gets featured in the Columbus Dispatch every few years for anniversary milestones. Dad was 61 and proud in the way men are proud when the thing they built outlasted every doubt anyone ever had about it. I found my seat at the far end of the table assigned for immediate family. My sister Kristen had saved it, which I appreciated. Kristen was 3 years older than me, and worked in marketing for the company. She was the kind of person who always saved your seat and remembered what you'd ordered at a restaurant 2 years ago, and I loved her for it. Even when she said the wrong thing. "You look exhausted," she said when I sat down. 5 a.m. flight, I said. "Why didn't you fly in yesterday?" "I had a call that ran until midnight and a contract to review before morning." "Work stuff," I said. She nodded, the way people nod when they've already stopped listening. The real conversation of the evening started, as it always did, with my father. Leonard Holloway had the quality some men develop after decades of running something. A calm authority that didn't raise its voice, because it had never needed to. He clinked his glass with a knife handle, the way he'd been doing at family dinners my entire life. And the room settled without complaint. "I want to say something before tomorrow," he said, "because tomorrow's going to move fast and I don't want this moment to get lost." He looked at Travis. 32 years ago, I opened one store with $12,000 and a lease I had no business signing. Tonight I get to watch my son get married in a room we could never have afforded back then. That's not luck. That's what we built together. He raised his glass, to Travis and to Amber and to the Holloway family. The room raised glasses. My mother pressed her fingers to the corner of her eye. Kristen grabbed my arm. Travis stepped forward, because Travis always stepped forward. He was 34 and looked like the kind of person who would be described in a profile piece as having his father's instincts. He had broad shoulders and a loud laugh and the confidence of someone who had never once sat at the far end of any table. "Since we're celebrating," Travis said, grinning, "I'll add one thing. We got word this week that First Heartland approved the SBA loan. 2 new locations, Easton and Grove City. We break ground on the build-outs in September." The room responded exactly the way Travis liked. With cheers and table slapping, and my uncle from Dayton whistling through his teeth. "How big?" someone asked. "Total expansion budget is right around $340,000, Dad said. "Between the loan and our operating line, we've got the runway." More cheering. Dad looked satisfied in the way he did when a plan came together, on schedule. Travis was already shaking hands across the table. I set down my water glass. "I could help with a capital position," I said. "If there's a gap somewhere, or if you want to reduce the debt load on the loan." The table didn't go completely quiet. It did something worse. It continued at almost the same volume, just slightly adjusted, the way a conversation shifts when someone has said something that doesn't quite fit. My mother recovered first. "Oh, Zoe, that's so sweet." Travis laughed, not unkindly. He was never unkind. "We're set, honestly. This is SBA financing. There's a whole approval structure. It's not really," he paused, choosing words. "It's just a different world than what you're used to." "I know how SBA lending works," I said. "I know you do in general," Dad said. His voice had gone careful. He used that voice when he wanted to be gentle and didn't quite know how. "But commercial real estate financing has its own infrastructure. We've got the right partners in place." Kristen reached over and put her hand on mine briefly, which meant she understood something was happening, and also did not know what to do about it. "We're not doubting you," she said. "It's just that this kind of capital structure is pretty specialized." "What Kristen means," Travis said, and his voice was the voice of someone explaining something obvious, "is that we're talking about collateral, loan covenants, supplier terms. It's not like putting money into a savings account. You'd be in over your head, and honestly, we don't need you to worry about it." I looked at my father. He was looking at his glass. "Of course," I said, "I understand." I pulled out my phone under the table and sent a text to Mona Park, who had been my financial advisor and operations manager for 4 years, and who responded to messages at any hour, with the efficiency of someone who treated her phone like a second brain. The text was 9 words. "Run the full Holloway review. Pull everything together." I put my phone face down on my chair beside my leg and picked up my fork. Dinner continued. Travis talked about the Easton location timeline. Dad talked about the contractor he'd hired for the build-out. Amber's mother asked about the floor plan, which segued naturally into a 20-minute conversation about flooring trends, and my father lit up in the way he only lit up when someone asked him about the thing he actually knew. Kristen talked about the rebranding initiative she was leading. It was warm and loud and genuinely joyful, the way Holloway family dinners usually were. I was there the way I was always there, present, peripheral, appreciated in the general sense that a room appreciates furniture. At some point, Dad mentioned First Heartland and his contact there. A loan officer named Bill Greer, who had handled Holloway accounts for 11 years. He described Bill the way people describe relationships they depend on, with a particular reverence that had nothing to do with affection, and everything to do with trust built over time. "Bill's been solid every single time," Dad said, "never once left us scrambling." My phone buzzed against the chair. Grayfield shows up in their property records on the Westerville location. Lease goes back to 2021. Also flagged, 28% stake in Cascade Flooring Supply through the parent LLC. "They don't know it's you. Confirming now." I turned the phone over. "Bill sounds like someone worth holding on to," I said. "The best," Dad agreed. "Some relationships you just don't mess with." He didn't look at me when he said it. My father's phone rang at 8:53. He glanced at the screen and frowned. A small frown, the kind that means something real is on the other end. He excused himself. We heard him through the doorway, his voice going from steady to very controlled, which with my father meant things were not going as they should. Travis noticed first. He watched the doorway. When Dad came back to the table, he looked the way I imagine a contractor looks when someone tells him the foundation has shifted. "It's Bill," he said. He sat down. "He's saying there's a regulatory hold on the SBA approval, a collateral verification issue with the Westerville location." Travis was already pulling out his phone. "What kind of issue?" "The bank needs written authorization from the property owner to confirm lease terms as collateral." "Standard part of the process, apparently, except that." Dad rubbed the back of his neck. "The ownership on that building is through a holding company, an LLC, and nobody at First Heartland has been able to reach anyone on the ownership side. Bill says if they can't get confirmation by end of business Monday, the approval window closes." Amber leaned forward. "So the loan is in jeopardy." "The whole expansion timeline could shift," Travis said. His voice had gone tight. 2 months of planning. Contractor deposits. Kristen looked at me. I'm not sure what she was looking for. Maybe just someone steady. "Do you know anything about this?" she asked, genuinely. She wasn't being sharp. She actually thought I might have context from somewhere. "A little," I said. Dad looked up. "The holding company on the Westerville building," I said. "Nobody's been able to reach them because they don't list a public contact. They structure things that way deliberately. Very private." Travis's eyes narrowed. "How do you know that?" "I've done some research on commercial property structures in Central Ohio. It's been relevant to some of my own work." I paused. "The LLC that owns the Westerville building is called Grayfield Properties Holdings. Their portfolio is mostly secondary market commercial real estate, strip retail, mixed use, some light industrial, Central Ohio, Southern Indiana, a little in Tennessee. Total assets around $9.2 million. "How do you know this?" Dad's voice was very still. "Research." "Zoe." Travis's voice was flat. "People don't research private property LLCs that carefully without a reason. What's your reason?" I looked at my father. "Check your email. I just sent you something." He picked up his phone. He read the screen once. Then he read it again. His jaw moved, but no sound came out. He lowered the phone very slowly to the table. And he looked at me the way I had never seen my father look at anything. Like someone had just told him. The map he'd been using was wrong, had always been wrong. And the road he thought he was on led somewhere completely different. Read it out loud, I said quietly. His voice was barely a voice. Grayfield Properties Holdings LLC, Principal Ownership Summary, Controlling Interest 100%. He stopped. He looked at me. He looked back at the phone. He tried again. Primary stakeholder. He couldn't finish. I'll finish it, I said. Primary stakeholder, Zoe A. Holloway. Total real estate assets under management, $9.2 million. Current tenancies include Holloway Home Interiors, Westerville location, lease originated March 2021. Cascade Flooring Supply minority stake, 28% acquired through parent entity August 2022. The table was absolutely still. Travis made a sound that was not a word. Kristen's hand went flat on the tablecloth. Amber looked at Travis. Travis looked at me. You own our building, Dad said. For 3 years and 4 months. And you have a stake in Cascade. He said it like he was working out the arithmetic of something. 28% of the parent entity, yes. Which is why your supplier terms have been more favorable than market rate since late 2022. I didn't advertise that. Travis pushed back in his chair slightly, not away from the table, but in the way people shift when their body needs to recalibrate. Zoe. His voice was different now, not the voice he'd used earlier. What? How is this? When I left Ohio, I said, I had about $23,000 saved and a piece of software I'd been building on nights and weekends for 2 years. A small SaaS tool for interior design project management. I licensed it to a regional chain for $800,000 when I was 24. I said it plainly, without drama. I didn't spend it. I spent about 6 months reading everything I could about commercial real estate investment in secondary markets. And then I started buying. My mother made a small sound. I made mistakes, I said. I bought the wrong property in Indianapolis in year 2 and spent 18 months unwinding it. I made better decisions after that. I kept going. I looked at my father. I learned from you, Dad. Not from conversations, because we never really had those conversations. But I watched how you thought about location. About what made a property worth the long-term hold versus the quick return. About timing and patience, and what it means to bet on a market that hasn't proven itself yet. You never taught me directly, because it never occurred to you that you should. But I was always paying attention. Dad set both his hands flat on the table. He didn't look at them. $9 million, Kristen said faintly. 9.2. And you've been our landlord for 3 years. 3 years, 4 months. You've never missed rent. I've never raised the rate below inflation adjustment. I want to be clear that this was not charity. The Westerville location performs. The lease terms I offered were fair, not generous. I'm not in the business of subsidizing anything, including my own family. Travis was quiet. It was unusual enough that Amber noticed and reached for his hand. Then why? He stopped, restarted. Why tonight? Why pull the bank verification? Why now? I looked at him for a long moment. Because tonight, when I offered to help with a capital gap, a gap that, relative to what I actually manage, is the equivalent of someone sliding you a 20 across a restaurant table. You told me I was in over my head, that I don't understand how real financing works, that it's a different world than what I'm used to. I kept my voice level. I had been keeping it level for a long time. Dad called it theoretical. You said it wasn't my world. Kristen said I'd be out of my depth. No one spoke. I have been a silent partner in this company's infrastructure for over 3 years. I have kept your primary supplier relationship stable by taking a minority stakes that no one knew about. I have held your rent at a rate that has cost me more than $40,000 in foregone market rate income because I believed in the Westerville location. And I believed in what you were building there. And tonight, at this table, the night before my brother's wedding, I was still the one who doesn't quite understand how business works. The candles in their low glass cylinders threw light across the tablecloth. My mother was very still. I want you to understand something, I said. This is not about revenge. I need to be clear about that, because I know how it might look. I'm not trying to scare anyone or prove a point for the sake of it. I'm doing this because something needed to change and I didn't know any other way to make you see it. I tried smaller ways, for years. A question here, an offered opinion there. You weren't looking. My father raised his face. Dale Holloway had never cried at a dinner table in his life. He was not crying now. But his eyes were the eyes of someone's standing in the middle of an assumption. They didn't know they'd been making until the floor came out from under it. Zoe, he said. What specifically? I asked. I said it gently, because that was the question that mattered. I wasn't going to let him off with a vague apology that forgot what it was apologizing for by morning. He understood. He'd always been, underneath everything, a precise man. For not asking, he said. For talking about the business at every family dinner for 12 years and not once turning to you and asking what you thought. For, he stopped, cleared his throat. I raised you to pay attention. You paid attention. And then I acted like you were the one who hadn't been in the room. His voice broke on the last word, just slightly. Leonard Holloway's voice did not break. That's on me. That's entirely on me. Travis put down Amber's hand. He looked at the table. I've talked down to you for years, he said. I didn't experience it as talking down. I thought I was just being helpful, explaining things. But that's what condescension feels like from the inside, I think. You don't know you're doing it. He looked up. I'm sorry, Zoe. I mean that. Kristen had been quiet. She was the kind of person who went quiet when things were real. I told you that you'd be out of your depth, she said finally. And I knew, even as I said it, that I didn't actually know anything about your depth. I just assumed. She pressed her lips together. I've been assuming for a long time. I'm sorry. My mother reached across Kristen and put her hand over mine. She didn't say anything for a moment. I asked if you were eating, she said eventually. Every time you come home, I ask if you're eating. As if that's the thing about you that matters most. She shook her head. You built something real, and I made you feel like the most important thing was whether you were getting enough sleep. That's not how I wanted to love you. I'm going to do better. I looked around the table. At my father's face and my brother's face and my sister's face. All of them holding the same expression. The particular look of people who have just understood something about themselves that they cannot unknow. Here's what I want, I said, and this isn't a negotiation. This is what happens or nothing happens. Everyone was listening. It was the first time in my memory that I had said something at a Holloway table, and every head had stayed turned toward me. I'll authorize the bank verification tonight. First Heartland gets the landlord confirmation by end of business tomorrow, and the SBA approval proceeds on schedule. The Easton and Grove City locations move forward. I paused. In exchange, I want a seat in the business conversations. Not as a silent backer, not as the family member you loop in out of courtesy. A real seat. I want to be in the room when decisions get made, the same way Travis is in the room. Because I have the same right to be there, and frankly, I have been affecting the outcomes from outside the room for 3 years. Without any credit for it. Dad nodded. I also want to restructure the Westerville lease to reflect my actual position. Not charity rates, not punishment rates. Fair market with a 5-year stability clause. I want Cascade supplier terms formally negotiated with my involvement, so everyone knows what the relationship is. Done, Travis said. He said it without hesitation, and I believed him. And I looked at my father. I want you to stop deciding what I know before I've had a chance to tell you. That's the one I'm not negotiating on. My father stood up. He walked around the table, around Kristen's chair, around the corner where my chair sat at the far end, and he stood in front of me. You have always been the sharpest person in this family, he said. I knew it when you were 11 years old and he stopped. I failed to account for it. I have no better explanation than that. I failed to account for it. And you went and built something extraordinary anyway. And I'm going to spend the rest of whatever time I've got trying to make that right. He extended his hand. I shook it. Then I picked up my phone and called Mona. Send First Heartland the landlord authorization for the Westerville collateral, I said. Tonight. Flag it for their loan officer's inbox first thing Monday. I paused. Then schedule a call with Cascade's parent company for next week. I want to bring Holloway Home Interiors formally into the supplier relationship. Disclosed, structured, full transparency. I looked at Travis across the table. He was watching me with an expression I had never seen from him in 31 years of being his sister. Yes, I'm sure. And Mona. Thank you. Tell the team I'll be in touch, Monday morning. I hung up. The bank will have everything they need by the time they open Monday, I said. The expansion is back on track. My father laughed, a real one, surprised out of him, the kind of laugh that comes when relief and something like wonder arrive at the same time. You'd have helped either way, wouldn't you? He said. It wasn't quite a question. I have been helping, I said. For 3 years, I just needed you to know who was doing it. Travis raised what was left of his wine. To Zoe, he said. Amber raised hers immediately. Kristen did. My mother's glass was already up. My father raised his last. The dinner wound down the way Holloway family events always wound down. Slowly and loudly. Everyone staying longer than planned. Cousins pulling out phones to show each other things. Amber's mother and my mother discovering they shared an opinion about centerpiece hydrangeas, and becoming fast friends over it. The room had shifted. Not completely. One dinner didn't undo years of pattern. But the way a house shifts after you open a window that has been painted shut for a long time. Later, when the venue staff had begun quietly collecting centerpieces and most of the guests had moved toward the lobby, my mother found me on the outdoor terrace off the ballroom. Dublin in late May smelled like cut grass and distant rain, and the sky was the color of dark ink. At the edges and lighter where the city lights pressed up into it. She stood beside me, without asking if I wanted company. I always told myself I treated you all the same, she said after a moment. You did, mostly. But the same isn't always fair, is it? She said it without the question mark. You were always moving differently than the rest of them. I saw it. I just didn't. She shook her head. I didn't know what to do with it, so I asked if you were eating. You were worried, I said. That's not a bad thing. It's what love looks like when it doesn't know its own shape, she said. She had a way of saying things that landed precisely sometimes. My mother, even when the rest of the time she was talking about hydrangeas. I'm going to ask better questions, starting now. Starting with, what are you building next? I looked out at the edge of the parking lot, where the streetlights made yellow pools in the early dark work. There's a mixed-use development in Nashville I've been watching for 8 months, I said. Retail ground floor, residential above. The seller finally moved on price last week. I think I'm going to move on it. Tell me about it, she said. So I did. I stood on a terrace in Dublin, Ohio, the night before my brother's wedding, and I talked about real estate and timing, and what makes a location worth the long-term hold. My mother listened the way she had never listened before. Not politely, not waiting for her turn, but actually listening. Her body turned toward me, asking questions that proved she had heard the last answer. It was a small thing. One conversation. But after years of explaining myself into rooms that stayed closed, it felt like something opening. Tomorrow Travis and Amber would get married. The family would sit at assigned tables, and cry at the right moments, and dance badly and take too many photos, and I would sit at whatever seat they had put my name card. And someone, maybe Travis, maybe my father, maybe Kristen, would pull it out for me before I got there. That was the thing about being seen. You didn't have to make it dramatic. You didn't have to make it a reckoning, or a revelation, or a moment that people marked in memory forever. You just had to stop being the person who made herself small so the room could stay comfortable. You had to let them reckon with the fact of you, all of you, and see what they did with it. $9.2 million and a seat at the table, I had always deserved. I had spent years building quietly. It turned out all I had ever needed was for them to look up and see who was holding the door.